Good morning, Ozoz Sokoh. Welcome on VH Berries.
Thank you very much, Victor. It's my pleasure to be here.
Right now, you're in Canada, and there is a fact which is that it starts to getting very cold right now.
Yes, I am in Mississauga, Ontario, land of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and other Indigenous peoples, and it is freezing. It feels like we're in winter, and like fall isn't quite done yet, so yes, it is quite cold.
Your journey is quietly inspiring and interesting because you started in Africa. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, thank you, Victor. And yeah, thank you for finding my journey inspiring. I was born and raised in Nigeria in West Africa and spent most of my life there. I, grew up in a family with my parents and my siblings and cousins and, love my country, love my people, love my family. So my journey started in Nigeria. So my journey began in Nigeria, and when I speak of my journey, I'm really talking about an intersection of food, travel, preservation, history, and heritage. And I grew up in a family that loved food, respected food, and was interested in exploring food. Both my parents are cooks and eaters, and we learned to make many things at home, but my parents also traveled a lot. And so just growing up, I think we were exposed to a variety of things, both Nigerian things, but also the larger, broader African continent and abroad. And that really sparked off my interest in using food as a lens to explore and to figure out all the ways that we're connected as human beings, but also all the ways that we're different.
Absolutely, Ozoz Sokoh, because there is this, as you mentioned, intersection connected to food, because for you, food is more than just eating.
Yes, for me, food is this landscape and this canvas through which we can view politics, economics, socialization, history, human connectedness, universality. So there's so many, because in many forms we all eat as part of one of those basic human needs. There are many ways that we can use food as an exploratory tool. We can look at the ways that people eat, what they eat, why they eat them, how their eating habits have changed through time, what that means for identity, for cultural identity, and food culture. So there's a lot that we can infer and extract just by looking at what people eat daily and how and all the different aspects of culture that surround the ways that they eat and the ways that they work with food and with ingredients.
That's great. And if I want to make a little recap, you were born in a Wari, specific place in Nigeria in 1976.
Yep, that's me.
And in a couple years, you are going to maybe have a house by the ocean.
Well, that's kind of my dream. I'm just not sure which ocean, but I think I want a house with French windows and the sound of waves crashing on the shore. I want to be able to walk barefoot on grass or on sand. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that works out.
And you have also a very particular position and perspective right now from Canada, because you are literally telling your story from abroad, if I can use your own words.
Yes. I think one of the things that I've discovered over the years while living abroad, so I went to university in the UK, and then I lived and worked in the Netherlands, and now live and work in Canada. I've realized that sometimes being away from home sharpens my perspective and helps me identify new pathways, new possibilities, new lenses that I want to use to investigate or to research Nigerian and West African cuisine. And so being here, I can draw many parallels between indigenous food knowledge here in Canada and traditional and indigenous food knowledge in Nigeria and many parts of West Africa. So there are many things that being abroad does for me. It gives me this perspective that is removed. I kind of have like an overview, like a bird's eye view of the food culture, the food systems. I'm able to explore that and compare it and research it alongside living and being immersed in another food culture. I also find it an interesting way to learn.
I love this word, bird's eye view, and I believe that you also have a connection. There is a connection between Ozoz Sokoh and James Baldwin on a very particular quote. You don't have a home until you leave it, and then when you have left it, you never can go back.
That was one of my favorite quotes because it articulated for me how I've changed away from home, but also when I go back, when I'm immersed in this culture that nurtured me and created me and kind of sustained me. And it's that our travels and our journeys and our experiences through the world change who we are. And so when we leave home, we go with a certain sense of identity, and there's a certain sense of meaning we ascribe to a number of things. But then the process of being away from home transforms us. It changes many things about us, such that when we go back, we're new people in a way. We're part the same, but we're part transformed. And so we're able to, there is some tension, there's some resistance, but there's also for me, a deeper appreciation of where I'm coming from, and some things just become enriched and more important by virtue of my being away from home and then returning. So, yeah.
You're also taking very concrete actions to do this kind of immersion that you just mentioned with multiple websites and libraries, for example, Feast Africa, and also its digital library.
So Feast Africa's one thing that is really important to me, and that is how do we collect knowledge and build archives in ways that enable people who may not know of their availability know, right? So Feast Afrique for me was a project around celebrating and documenting the history of West Africa and the contributions of enslaved West Africans to the global success of the world. And I do that through exploring ingredients. The library developed as part of my research for this project called Coast to Coast, from West Africa to the World. And for me, there's a lot of knowledge out there that people aren't aware of. And I wanted to create a platform and a means of gathering that information and bringing it together and creating access to documents, to historical work, for both people who are curious as individuals, but also people who want to embark on deeper scholarly research, that they have these books, 250 ebooks that are free to access, that they have these books to kind of support them on that journey, giving them knowledge that spans from like the 1800s to the modern day. And, they have these resources, these references to kind of support the research that they want to do, the knowledge gaps they want to close, the value they want to create. And for me, community and institution building are key parts of working together to kind of create records of West African food culture, food history, and contributions. Because a lot of those contributions are not really spoken about. When you read annals and you get into the annals of history and you read history books, a lot of the Black experience is confined to slavery and to the slave trade. And that is not the whole story. And for me, it's important that people know that the transatlantic slave trade is as much Black history as it is history of the countries that did the enslavement, right? So it's also history of Europe and of America and all the countries in between. So it's not just Black history, it's a collective history. That's one part. The other part is that I really want people to know that West Africans contributed greatly to transforming knowledge systems, and they weren't just contributors of physical labor. They also contributed a lot of intellectual and technical knowledge that was largely successful for many ingredients: cotton, rice, palm oil. The knowledge of enslaved West Africans transformed those ingredients from ingredients to commodities upon which many countries built their wealth. So it's important that we're able to kind of put these pieces together, and so people are more aware of the contributions and not dismissive of them.
Ozoz Sokoh, to tell this full story, there are on this website 6 chapters. Eat, experience, explore, listen, watch, and listen.
Yes, so you can check them out on Feast Freak and just explore the various aspects of food culture, the layers of meaning that, are behind ingredients, drinks, stories. For instance, how did vanilla become a commodity, or how did rice journey across the Atlantic? So there are many stories that I think would serve the world well if people knew about them and were able to make connections with other things that we read about in history and in history books.
In addition to these 6 chapters, they are also written in a very special language and dialect that I think called the NDB.
Ndebe. So yes, Ndebe is a script that was put together by a lady, Lotana, and is a modern form of writing that references a lot of historical West African and African scripts like Nsibidi and a few others. And it was really important for me, and it's really important for me in my work, to explore the intersections. So when I think of food as more than eating, I want to explore food in a variety of spheres and through a variety of lenses, whether those are language and writing or graphics design and art and music. And so exploring Ndebe was one of the things that I wanted to do as a way to kind of deepen my knowledge about the arts and how we can find ways to connect across different spheres and different landscapes.
In definitive, this is a sort of transition because I believe that all of this knowledge around food and the recipes were told by your parents, and today you have 3 children, so you're also transmitting this art.
Yes, and my parents were really instrumental in just giving us a sense of the value of food and enjoying it and learning to be respectful towards it. And I hope that that is a legacy I'm able to give my children. And, I started writing my food blog, Kitchen Butterfly, in 2009 when I lived in the Netherlands. And, one of the things that prompted me was I knew that my children would be global citizens, so, like most people are today, and would be exposed to a variety of cultures and cuisines. And I really wanted to find ways to document the things that I was learning and the things that I knew about Nigerian food, but also about other foods, and just give them kind of like these manuals or references so that as they grow up, they would have an understanding of different aspects of Nigerian ingredients, recipes, dishes, food culture. And so, my desire is that in a few years they will want to eat a food from home and miss it, and then be able to ring me or be able to search on my blog for the recipe and enjoy it. So, yeah.
So Ozoz Sokoh, all of these projects that we just covered are online for most of them. And I think that maybe you're going to start a real restaurant offline.
I don't think that's something that I'd ever do, start a restaurant, because I think it would be exhausting. But I also think that it might stifle my creativity. So for me, when I think about food, I really enjoy all aspects of it. So I enjoy eating, I enjoy cooking, but I also enjoy grocery shopping. I enjoy going to farmers markets and supermarkets. I enjoy learning about the ingredients. I enjoy the photography, the research, art. So for me, it's not one thing that attracts me to food. It's a variety of things. And when I put them all together, I see food as having endless possibilities. It's so rich and comforting, and you can kind of explore a number of pathways with it. So yeah, there are other ways that I want to enjoy and sustain my love for food beyond cooking. So a restaurant is not in my future. I do pop-ups though. So I do a lot of events where I combine my filmmaking with food and discussions. I do work around education, to share history and heritage of food, to share connections between West African food and foods of the Black diaspora. So there are other ways that I embrace my love for food and share beyond just eating.
Ozoz Sokoh, the way you sustain your love of food in an offline way is, you just mentioned it, doing some short films as a filmmaker and be able to meet all the audiences, and also by doing conferences, for example, at the Forecast Festival earlier this year in April.
Yes. So you just hit on it. There is a huge aspect of my work, which is connecting with audiences in different publics. And whether that is in museum settings or in literary settings or in broader general societal settings, I find it a rewarding way to engage and to be in contact and in discussion with people with different backgrounds, different life experiences, where we can share what we do, but also exchange ideas, and also kind of be in conference and be in this discussion mode where we're exploring ideas, but also sparking off new thoughts and new possibilities. And one of the recent things that I did was in collaboration with the Museum of Food and Drink in New York and the Ace Hotel in Brooklyn. A month ago now, in October, we organized an evening of film screenings, looking at a couple of films that I made in conjunction with a spoken word poet, Tolu Agbelusi, and, had the film screening, shared that with an audience, did a demo of some of the dishes that we talked about that were explored in the films, and then also gave the audience a 3-course tasting that matched the films that we screened. And there was an opportunity for discussion and for exchange of ideas. And it was just a wonderful evening with a group of 75 people, in person, face to face, just exploring these ideas, the ideas that, one, food is more than eating, the ideas that West African enslaved contributed a lot, but are not recognized for their contributions in many parts of the world. For instance, I don't know if you've heard of Carolina gold rice. So Carolina gold rice is a variety of rice that became very popular and actually made Carolina rich because of the sale of the rice in the Americas in the 18th, 19th centuries. And the growth and the expansion of Carolina gold was largely due to the knowledge of enslaved West Africans, right, who were familiar with growing rice in the kind of waterlogged systems that were present in the Carolinas, because that's what they were used to in West Africa. And so they brought that knowledge and transformed the agricultural practices, teaching them how to build dikes and dams, and just basically being comfortable working with the land. Hundreds and thousands of lives were lost of enslaved West Africans in doing so. But it made Carolina gold rice a success for the enslavers. And so, all of this knowledge is important. It's important that it's in the public sphere, it's in the public domain, that people know, and the people know the contributions of enslaved West Africans, and those aren't just dismissed as just physical labor. So that's something that's important to me, and that's something that we talked about in this event with the Museum of Food and Drink and the Ace Hotel in New York last month.
And looking back, Ozoz Sokoh, about 2021, it was a very productive year for you.
I think every year is productive. Every year is productive. I'm thankful to be alive. I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful to be doing the things that I want to do and that I want to experience and explore. And 2021 has largely been about research. It's been about research, but also using that research to create spaces where people can immerse themselves, and Feast of Freak is one of those. So it's both been about research and building, and it's kind of giving me an opportunity to then kind of sit back and reflect on how I can take this platform of Feast of Freak and make it even more useful to people who are looking to know more about themselves, but also know more about food and West African food and drink history. So, it's done. 2021 has gifted me a number of things, and I hope that I've been gracious and kind, and I have done it justice.
And personally, I'm always looking from pieces of advice from experts. So I'm wondering what type of Nigerian food would you recommend to someone who wants to begin and who does not know any much about it?
Okay, so Nigerian food is very varied in the way that it is set up. It's very much a culture of soups and stews and pot cooking. And so I'd say start with one of the stews. When we talk about stew in Nigeria, we're talking about a specific dish that uses a blend of red tomatoes, onions, and both sweet and hot peppers. Then it's blended and cooked down in oil. So, and then you can add protein. And when I think about what is similar to it, it's similar to like an Italian ragu or bolognese, except it doesn't take as much time, or maybe a French beef bourguignon. Right. So it's a stew like that, and it is delicious and also incredibly versatile. You can eat it with bread, rice, roots and tubers, whether they're boiled, fried, or roasted. But you could also use it as the base of another dish that's popular across West Africa called jollof rice. So I definitely say starting with Nigerian stew is the way to go. And there are a number of great recipes. I have one on my blog, and you'll find a number on the internet.
We just mentioned your environment with your family, 3 children, but you also have a team surrounding you at work. For example, when it comes to write some advices and article with Koyo Kuo.
So Koyo was my mentor.
Wow.
So when I was working on my forecast program, she was the mentor that I applied to. So forecast is a mentorship organized by a group in Berlin, and their goal is really to support ideas that matter. And what they do is that they bring together a group of mentors who then have kind of a call sheet, right, where they talk about who they are and the kind of mentees they're looking for. And so when I applied to Forecast, I applied to Koya's program of curating as unearthing. Because at this point in my life as well as my food career, I am growing my skills as a museum curator. And so I wanted to apply to Koya's project because she had the knowledge and the skills and the compassion and the guidance that I needed to give me an understanding of the museum and cultural management space and to kind of help me on my journey. So, yes. So if anything, I was on her team.
If I understood correctly, Ozoz Sokoh, before you started getting involved in this festival, Koyo was already in the program and she helped you.
Yes, so Koyo is a curator with decades of experience and is very, very well known in the museum and the contemporary art space. So she is already a curator, and so I kind of learned a little bit under her.
And I'm also very curious about the journey that you made, as I mentioned, from Nigeria to Canada, there is a huge difference of climate and also environment. So I'm wondering, how was the transition, even if before, as you said, you lived in numerous places in Europe?
For me, the biggest transition with moving across countries, across borders, it is mental. It's in the head. If your head isn't ready, it'll be difficult for the rest of you to follow through. And so, I made the decision to move to Canada because I was thinking of my family and my kids. If I was thinking of just myself, at that point, I would have moved to New York. I had applied and gotten into a program at the New York University, NYU, to do a food studies master's. And it was, so that was on one hand. And the other hand was moving to Canada kind of with the possibility of also doing a food studies master's at the University of Toronto, or doing something else. In the end, I chose Canada for a number of personal reasons and family reasons. And so I moved here. And I like changing seasons. I like the fact that the seasons change. And in Nigeria, you also have seasonal changes as well. And for me, it's a part of life, and I embrace it all.
Got it. You want to make a fantastic crossover between the Nigerian food and the poutine.
Actually, a few days ago, I was making a meat in a gravy sauce. And it was part of a Nigerian recipe called meat pie. So basically, you make this hand pie and you stuff it with this meat cooked in like a curry gravy with potatoes, onions. And I was just thinking about how fantastic that gravy would be on chips. And so I was thinking, is that a Nigerian version of poutine? But I haven't actually tried it out, but it would be delicious, even with the cheese curds. So yeah, that's something I'm definitely going to try. I'll let you know how it goes.
I want to know it. Ozoz Sokoh, I'm wishing you the best for all of your project. I'm very grateful, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Victor. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to share a little bit about who I am, a bit about my journey and my story. Thank you.